Very good morning to one and all who have joined this live session of our Life Skill MOOC Week 1. I welcome you on behalf of the whole SEMCA team, Director SEMCA, Dr. Manas Ranjan Panigrahi, and my personal behalf. I welcome you, sir, Dr. C. Murli Krishna, for this expert lecture. We will be talking. We have discussed in the MOOC about introduction to communication, chain of communication, elements of human communication, common barriers of effective communication, non-verbal communication, specifically on body language, creativity, and negotiation in communication during the our lectures in the MOOC. So I think most of us have already gone through these videos and lectures and PPTs. Today we will be having a session on listening skills, which is a very important important aspect for communication. And today we have with us Dr. C. Murli Krishna. He is professor and head Department of English. He is also director ELTC at Osmania University, Hyderabad, in the Telangana state. I welcome you, sir, on my personal behalf and on behalf of SEMCA team. Now I request you to kindly take forward this session and enlighten us about more about listening skills. Welcome, sir. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Monica, for that very sincere introduction and nice of you to have introduced modules also. Just for a quick recap, I also thank Dr. Manas Panigrahi, who has been the driving force behind this program. This is the third session, if I'm not mistaken, which life skills, MOOC life skills is going out to a wide section of learner participants across the different countries. Very glad to know about the response. And yes, also, hi, I cannot say good morning. Hi to all the participants who are there. We don't know which time zone you are in. So, greetings from Hyderabad, where Usmania University is situated. Greetings also from India, from Delhi. So, as Dr. Monica just gave a quick recap, this week, the ongoing week, you may have listened to the video lessons, video sessions on the different aspects of communication skills. And I chose this webinar topic, titled Effective Listening Skills, uh, in order to reinforce whatever has been said in these first week of lessons. More than reinforcing, it is also something which has not been touched upon in detail. And it is so much a vital part of communication. If somebody is listening, then only communication takes place. If somebody is listening badly, also, it cannot take place. So, very often, ineffective listening leads to breakdown in communication, whatever be the subject matter, whether it is science, engineering, technology, or humanities. The basic, as you have seen in the channel of communication, that topic, you need a good effective speaker, source of speech coming from a source, and you need a good listening setup. And what better listening setup can we ask for than our natural hearing capacity? And that is where I think we need to make a difference between hearing and listening. We hear sounds, we hear whatever is happening about us, around us, but when we are talking, interacting with the speakers, with fellow participants, or with anybody in society, we are also, it's important for us to listen with a lot of empathy, listen with a lot of understanding, and not just be indifferent to whatever is being said. And so to go into finer details of listening. Listening affects listening. They say is mother of in many is a linchpin of communication. In many ways, it either spoils or mars communication, as I said. So I would like to take you along with a few slides which I have prepared, and that would also give us some kind of a direction during. I have about 15 minutes, I suppose, Dr. Nagpal. 15-20 minutes I can take. Okay. I
Sir, yes, you can take, sir, maybe 20 to 25 minutes at max,
okay.
and then we can take the queries.
Yes, that's great. So I would like to use the PowerPoint here. Let me just share the screen.
By the time you are sharing, I'll just speak to the participants. I'll request all of you, if you have any queries in between the session, you may post it on the chat box or question answer. Otherwise, at the end of the presentation, after 20 to 25 minutes, we will be taking up all the questions one by one. So be with us and be active and interactive, so that we get most benefit of this live session.
Are you
Uh,
able to see this?
yes, sir. The screen share is on and it is very well visible, sir.
Effective listening skills.
Right, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is perfectly
Okay.
fine.
Okay, dear participants, this is the title, as I said, of today's webinar topic: effective listening skills. We all have degrees of skills in every skill, degrees of proficiency. Listening skill, it's important to have it with us effectively, and not listen clumsily. Okay, let me first, yeah, I'll begin this presentation with a beautiful quotation by Diogenes Laertius. Uh, he said once, "We have 2 ears and only one tongue, in order that we may hear more and speak less." Very beautifully said long, long ago. The very fact that in our scheme of nature's scheme of things, we have been given 2 ears and only one tongue shows how much more important it is to hear and listen than to just go on speaking. The mother of all communication is generally listening is considered to be the mother of all communication. Because when you're born, I think that the first skill that plays out, that gets activated, is listening. You listen, you hear. So that is how it has been seen generally as a mother of all communication. While emphasizing the primacy of listening among all the skills, one needs to distinguish between hearing and listening. As I mentioned in my introduction, we need to make a difference between hearing and listening. Many of you would know the difference. The processes of different kinds of listening need to be analyzed. Now, let me go back to that earlier point. You hear sounds, very often we hear somebody speaking, but are we really listening? So technically, the physics part of it, sound, velocity, reception, transmission of a sound, and reception at the other end, that is how we look at hearing. You hear something, but when you begin to uh, blend it with understanding, hearing and understanding will lead to listening. So listening is basically hearing with understanding, with comprehension. So that is a technical difference. And we need to also look at the different kinds of listening before we understand, before we sort of enhance our listening skill. And also look at what are the barriers that hinder good listening. We need to identify these barriers, or barriers in the sense hindrances or disturbances or blockades in good, effective listening. The next slide. Again, I would like to share these two quotes with you. Rebecca Falls once said, one of the most valuable things we can do to heal one another is listen to each other's stories. Now, this is a beautiful dimension of listening skill altogether. Now, if you are able to listen to somebody with feeling, with empathy, then it's a very valuable thing that you possess, because it has got a therapeutic, a healing kind of a aspect. When you listen with feeling, with empathy to the other person's difficulties or experiences, stories here is not just plots, but any kind of experience. You are actually doing a lot of healing of the other person. The speaker feels lightened. If a speaker feels, is unburdened, whatever has been weighing him or her down. So that's the therapeutic aspect of listening. Then the second one you see on the screen, Dean Rusk. One of the best ways to persuade others is with your ears, by listening to them. You can imagine, there's an apparent paradox in this statement. When we think that you need to speak well, you need to convince people with your listening, with your speaking powers to persuade others to do, but equally well or maybe better is done by good listening. If you're able to listen to people, you are actually not only healing them, but you're also in many ways getting in sync, striking such a beautiful rapport with them that you end up succeeding in persuading them to with your line of thinking, with your line of plan, with your line of ideas. So listening, good listening also is a good way to persuade the speaker. It's not the other way around. Even if it is the other way around, this also is a good way to persuade others. I like these two beautiful quotations by Rebecca Falls and Dean Rusk, respectively. I thought I should share this because it is giving you a totally different dimension of listening skill. I move on to the next one. Now, what are the different kinds of listening? Experts identify a few different kinds of listening. I have been mentioning them up until now. Depending on the quality of listening, it can be divided into four types. Ignoring. Ignoring is also one kind of listening. It's basically negative. It looks negative, but sometimes when you're convinced that there is nothing substantial that is being said, you can pretend to listen, you can actually ignore, or even if you understand, you ignore, you don't act on that. So it's one kind of listening. Then you have the selective listening. Selective listening is right now you can do this selective listening. You can listen to some part of my. I'm sure at the beginning when we started this, you were very very selective, and sometimes you were adjusting here and there, trying to zoom in. So even in a live kind of a session, when the speaker is going to speak for about 1 hour or more than 1 hour, there are times when you actually switch off, and but there are times you also pay a lot of concentration. So that's selective listening. Then, of course, you have the attentive listening, which is done with a lot of attention throughout. There's a consistent kind of listening that takes place, and you're very, very attentive. There's no point you're ignoring, no point you're being selective. You're consistently listening to what is being said. Then, of course, empathetic listening. I mentioned this. This is a kind of listening wherein you are in the other person's shoes. You are there with the other person's point of view, totally with feeling. With it's almost like you become one with the speaker. Total empathy. It's not very indifferent or a regulated or a selective kind of a listening. So, broadly, these four: ignoring, selective listening, attentive listening, empathetic listening. Then this famous philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti, I wanted to share one of his thoughts here. Is a very well-known international philosopher. He once said, when you're listening to somebody completely attentively, then you're listening not only to the words, but also to the feeling of what is being conveyed, to the whole of what is being conveyed, not part of it. So, this is attentive, empathetic kind of listening. It's a combination of these two that is being mentioned by him. Then, this quote by Doug Larson: wisdom is the reward you get for a lifetime of listening when you would have preferred to talk. Beautifully said, very intelligent kind of a paradoxical statement. Uh, you are better off in life, you are wiser in life if you are a good listener, because you take in from many sides and you have a lot of data to choose and pick from and reject later. So whatever is left with you, whatever you decide to retain with you, is wisdom. So this is the reward. Wisdom is a reward that you get for a long time of listening, when easily you could have not listened and preferred to talk and bore the other person. Again, I thought I should share that with you. Then we come to the hurdles, the barriers. Sometimes, although you want to listen, there are certain problems which do not encourage good listening. Now, the physical reasons may be there. For example, even as I'm talking now from Hyderabad, from India, suppose my neighbor decides to do some civil work, carpentry work, or some kind of a or the office next to me, there is some kind of a loud noise going on as part of their maintenance or repairs, then that can definitely interfere with my whatever I'm saying, and it might affect your listening. That's totally not in your control. Physical reasons, speakers, the machinery may be bad. There might be some disturbance in your speakers or in my mic. So these are physical reasons which can actually be barriers to good listening. Then age and attitude. Now you must have observed in your own homes, in your own colonies, societies, that people who are aging, who are more than 70 or 75, sometimes much younger also, 50 plus also, their capacity to hear, take in noise, take in sound, is reduced considerably. So there is speakers have to repeat and say it aloud for them to understand what you're telling them. So that can be a big. You might end up becoming a bad listener because of the age. You may not follow what other person is saying. You would like to increase the volume at a very big, decibel levels for you to understand what is coming across from the TV. So age is a big factor you cannot deny. And then attitude. If you're already negative to what the situation you are in, you're negative with the speaker. If you think what is there to hear, what is there to understand or listen, your attitude also affects good listening, because you tend to ignore many things. So that can be an mental set. Mental set, of course, is a mindset. If you are motivated yourself to do well in life, to do well in your profession, to do well in interactional domain with people, your mindset is a positive mindset related to attitude here again, and you tend to remove much of the hurdles and yourself, and that affects your listening. You listen well. So mental set also could be certain problems with your hearing capacity. It could be a kind of a partial deafness, and physically also. So all this affects your mindset, and you tend to hear badly. Or You may, if the mental set is positive, then you may be a good listener. If your mental set is negative, your attitude is negative, you end up being a bad listener. You miss out many things. If you're preoccupied, if you're worried also, if you're mentally worried most of the time, if you're not open to what is happening around, and if you are drunk, if you are intoxicated, and you are switched off from what is happening, it affects your mental set. So your preoccupation, if you are somebody who's preoccupied, although he's sitting among people, he tends to miss out on what is being said. So that's a mindset, that's a mental set. Then, of course, language. I'm speaking to you in an international language, you're able to understand because I chose to speak in English. If I choose to speak in Telugu, which is my first language, a mother tongue, then I'm sure even in India, not many people would follow, except people who are from my own state or who are from Hyderabad would follow Telugu. So, what language I speak in also determines whether it is going to be a hurdle or it's going to be a smooth affair. So, it's important that we choose something, a language that many people are comfortable in, many people are exposed to, and they are proficient in that language. Then, of course, equally related to all these factors is careless listening. If you're careful, there is no barrier. If you're careless, carelessness is again personality kind of it's a personality trait. If you're careless about things, you're also careless about what is being said. It's a personality, it's a behavioral problem. So you end up listening badly. So these are some of the barriers to good listening, and they're interrelated. They're not, they can, all of them can act at one go, or one of them may play a very prominent role, or two, three can play a prominent role. In any case, if we don't care to take care of these things, they might pose as very big barriers to good listening. This slide, a good listener will try to understand the speaker's perspective. Listen with the whole body, not judge prematurely, go beyond the words of the speaker, paraphrase the speaker. And a good quality, qualities of a good speaker is that is always trying to empathize with the speaker's perspective. What is the speaker's point of view? And is listening with the whole body, in the sense, if I'm saying something, you're not just you're also trying to bend, put your ear close to the source of the sound, trying to understand. So your interest shows through your body language. And not be judgmental. Don't judge anybody much ahead of the time when you can judge. So you take time, don't jump to conclusions. That will affect also listening. So a good listener is very, very unbiased. He also goes beyond the words of the speaker. They try to, right, just as in reading, you say reading between the lines. In you, good listener will also read between the sentences that are being said, or read beyond. Look, there's a world beyond the sentence, so you're trying to understand that world of the speaker. Then a good listener is also able to paraphrase the speaker, not loudly, but there's an internal language, parallel language that is going on. If you are a good listener, you're also trying to paraphrase the speaker, put the same words to yourself differently in your own mother tongue or in the same language, possibly. Excuse me. So, points to remember: hearing is distinct from listening. It is listening alone that makes a communication. A quick recap: listening to somebody, the whole of your attention, say it says you matter to me. When you listen with a lot of interest and attention, you're actually telling them, hey, you matter to me. We listen much faster than we can speak. Understanding will fill the gap in speed. There's always a differential speed between listening and speaking. Howsoever effective a speaker, your listening is faster than the other person's speech. So understanding will fill the gap. In listening, the listener is as much involved as the speaker is. Careless listening can snub the speaker and halt the entire communication process. To listen well, one doesn't have to agree with the speaker, but try and understand the speaker's perspective. Yeah, you don't have to agree. Just because you're a good listener doesn't mean that you agree with everything. You are showing interest in what is being said, but it's for you to judge later, much later, coolly, leisurely, whether you reject that idea or whether you accept that idea. Since listening is it can be seen as fundamental to all communication, poor listening can go on to become a major barrier to communication. Listening is a much more conscious activity that demands a lot more than just physical hearing. It's a very dynamic activity. Listening is not passive. It might be a receptive skill, but it is a very dynamic, conscious activity. A person who listens well and engineers his body language appropriately is considered a good conversationalist, even though he actually speaks less. A good conversationalist need not always speak. You can, by the very power of your good listening, you can be considered a good conversationalist because you have everything that makes up for a good listener. An effective and active listener, after grasping the content of the speaker, gets engaged in trying to understand him and looks at the problem from the other person's perspective, engineers his body language appropriately, giving the listener constant feedback. Feedback mechanism is also very good if you are a good listener. The speaker also knows you are actually laying out a good direction for the speaker if you are a good listener. It's like a good traffic policeman if you are a good listener. He knows what to avoid, where to go ahead. Selective listening is listening to parts of the conversation while ignoring most of it. Attentive listening involves listening to the speaker completely attentively without glossing over or ignoring any part of the speech. Empathetic listening is the ultimate kind of listening that is done not just to listen and understand, but understand the speaker's world as he sees it. It is getting into another person's frame of reference. Most of the problems in listening arise because of the discrepancy in our speed of talking and listening. Physical reasons, age, attitude, mental set, language, quality of listening are some of the other factors that become either barriers or enablers of good listening. Last slide, again with a quotation by George Eliot: the people of the world are islands, shouting at each other across a sea of misunderstanding. So if you are simply shouting and the other person is not able to understand, there's unwillingness to understand, it becomes a sea of misunderstanding. So this is, if everybody is a bad listener, this is how we end up. Thank you.
Uh, thank you very much, sir. I think many of my doubts also got cleared with this. Listening is a very important skill which I have heard, but I think today I have kind of understood it, that how it is very important. So I'll invite a few questions. There are few in chat box, and one person has raised the hand. Mehvish Khan, I am allowing you to talk, so you can kindly ask your question. Mehvish Khan, I have allowed you to talk. You can now ask your question.
Ma'am,
Yes, yes, ma'am.
hello, ma'am.
Yes, go ahead, Mehvish ji. You can ask your
Um,
question.
yeah, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, I just want to know about the physical, barriers of communication.
Hmm. Yeah, Mavish Khan, you can address me the question.
No, sir.
You don't want me to answer the question?
So, Mehvish, sir, I think has already kind of replied to your question. The physical barriers he's explained very well. Sir, I will request you to maybe
Yeah.
give a 2 3 points on this.
Yeah, physical, as I mentioned, Mavish, it's
Yes, sir.
about it's about the physical blocks, like some kind of a obstructive sound or a bad kind of a system, or there is a technology breakdown, or there is some kind of a wall between you and the speaker, or there's a kind of a window that is not opening properly, so you're shouting, you're trying to, or it's a bad telephone, and like very often it's making a lot of unnecessary noise. These are physical barriers. Very often we don't have control over these physical barriers, but wherever we should try and remove those physical barriers. I hope
Okay.
I
No, I didn't have it. Yeah.
clarified.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Uh, Thank you, sir. I think it is well answered. Our next question, which has come to the chat box, is uh, how to change a careless listener to a good listener. A very, very
Huh.
difficult thing to get into other person's perspective.
Uh,
So, please.
Yeah, how to change a careless speaker to a good speaker. There again, I think if you are a wonderful speaker, if you are an inspiring speaker, automatically I think people get gravitated, attracted to what you are saying. But that is not the routine. It happens once a while. On a routine basis, I suppose careless listener needs some kind of a counseling. People at home, people in the classrooms, teachers, family members have to keep telling him or her that he has to be more present in the present, not just be preoccupied, or not have a very arrogant or a haughty attitude, where no, they tend to think that they're experts, they don't need to learn anything. So that kind of an attitude, so all those hurdles which we spoke, on all those fronts, that person needs a little advice from elders, from friends. Unfortunately, if they're very arrogant, friends also hesitate to tell them. But family members, I think they should give her or him a whack and tell properly that you are not, you are being very absent-minded. Yeah, professors are supposed to be absent-minded, because especially if you're a scientist at lab, uh, so very often it happens like that. So there are many ways in which you can convert, but I don't know what will be the success percentage, but you can try and do that.
A few more questions. Is there any relation between a good speaker and an effective listener?
Relationship between a good speaker and an effective listener. Okay. Yeah, that would be like Brian Lara and Sachin Tendulkar are playing together. Two experts. That will be a wonderful conversation. There is a great link. I think some of the best conversations happen when the speaker is good and when the listener is also good. I think that will be, even the third person who are an audience to such a conversation, they also really enjoy. I think that they contribute to 100% communication, maybe 120% success in a communicative situation. Because you have two very good models there, a good model speaker and a good model listener. So you cannot ask for more.
Yes, I think it's a very, 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 very positive and a good combination where
Mm,
sometimes we can arrive at certain conclusions also.
mm,
So, if I put it in an example, a teacher and a student also, it will be a best learning time or best teaching time both ways.
right.
Similarly, in other situations also, it will be very effective.
You see, some of the best speakers, some of the best professors, teachers, classroom teachers, they always remember the very good, effective listeners, and they become a lifetime kind of a friends. There's always teachers are fond of very good students, and very good students invariably are very good listeners.
Yes. Sir. Another question is how to overcome the barriers of listening.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that physical
Yes.
barriers, especially. Other barriers you need to, as we were discussing, people need to be told about their mental makeup, about their attitude, about yeah, the physical barriers. And also, if somebody is not motivated, you cannot really change them into good listener. Suppose you are not interested in say business share market, and if I try to give you a lecture on share market, what you naturally, you'll be a very poor listener. You try to ignore, and you try to. So it is that, and where the interest is matching and where the speaker is also being relevant. I think if the difficulty comes, then counseling is one, and then physical removal of those barriers and change of attitude. These things go a long way.
Right, sir. Then there is this, is this a good practice during the speech we ask question to the audience just to keep them busy?
Huh. Yeah. Yeah, though that is a part of effective speakers. Now, good speakers, public speakers, they have this strategy of asking suddenly a question. Did I get the question right? Can you repeat that?
It is, sir, is this a good practice during the speech we ask question to the audience just to
Hmm.
keep them busy? It is, I think,
Yes.
more of a judgmental question sometime, and sometime it's true also.
Yeah, it works well. It's a good strategy for many good speakers. They keep the audience alert, and but in any case, there is also a listening span. Initially, before a lecture begins, your span of attention is very high, and slowly in the middle, the span becomes narrower, and then towards the end, when the speaker is going to conclude, again the span of attention becomes very wide. So it has a natural propensity to, it's never consistent, although we mentioned attentive listening, but a few people manage to be consistently attentive listeners. So, yes, it's a good strategy for the speaker to ask questions in between when the lecture is going on. That's a good way to keep them alert.
So next question, it is coming from a little different topic which we have covered in this week basically. How do you manage body language in different cultures? So this is
Hmm.
not related to listening skills, but overall from the week's module.
Hmm. No, but it is related to listening also, because body language, I think one of the points which I mentioned is, if you are sitting back, like if you are just if somebody is speaking to you about, say, the virus, how to take care against virus, you cannot be casual in your body posture. You cannot just sit back and not show any kind of a interest. So body communicates, as the discussions in the forum, I've observed people have been discussing about this 93% non-verbal communication. Body language is very high on the percentage, 50%, 55%. So even when you are listening, your bodies matters. Just because you are not speaking doesn't mean your body language can be indifferent. A good listener will also have good body language. Maybe like trying to come in front, trying to get close to the speaker, uh, not very close to make the speaker uncomfortable, but hearing is better.
Right. Right, sir. I think yes, body language. Otherwise, like in, I think conveys most of the things without even opening one's mouth and without even
Yeah,
getting into any kind of interaction.
true.
So we'll take maybe one or two more questions. There are, while listening a person, especially for us engineers, we try to be judgmental very fast. By doing so, I think we are hindering proper communication. But how can we maintain authority and yet being a good conversationalist?
Yeah,
So
now I have been a bad listener. Can you repeat the first part?
yes, sir. So basically, Mr. Deepak is saying while listening to a person, like he's specifically referring to engineers, that we are very judgmental. We become
Hmm.
very judgmental, and by doing so, I think we are hindering proper communication. But how can
Absolutely.
we maintain authority and yet being a good conversationist?
Hmm.
So I think hindrance, authority, and good conversation are the 3 points
Hmm.
here.
Yeah, very good question. As we mentioned during the slide presentation, it's important for a good listener, howsoever boring or howsoever tedious the speaker is, not to become prejudge, not to prejudge the speaker. You may not agree with the content, you may not agree with the speaker's body language, you may not agree with the way the person is speaking. Still, don't judge. You need to reserve your judgment for a later point of time. So when you're restraining yourself from taking prejudging the speaker, you're actually keeping your cool to an extent that whatever good comes here and there, you are not blind to that. You are not deaf to that. You are continuing to hear and take in a few important things, even from a corpus of unessential things. So it's important to be consistently aware of the fact that don't judge the speaker immediately. And about maintaining authority, yeah, a good listener also has an equal responsibility in trying to do justice to his position in life. Just as a speaker has a responsibility. If the speaker is speaking casually, authority is gets dwindled. So also, if a listener is doing a clumsy job, then his authority as a listener there, as a student or as a patient or as a client or as a seller, the authority gets dwindled if you're not listening properly. Very important not to allow your authority, both for the speaker and the listener, to allow the authority to dwindle by being a clumsy speaker or by being an indifferent listener. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, sir. I think you've covered whatever is being asked. So if there will be any further query by the listener right now, if
Hmm.
they may ask again. Then there is this question. I think whether it's a question, I am also not understanding. It's what is strategic plan? Is
Okay.
it uh, if you can say something about it, or I think it's something else.
Strategic plan.
Yes.
Strategic plan for in what? In speaking or hearing or listening?
It's not mentioned. I'll request the Navlesh ji to either elaborate on the question, or maybe more specific on the question, then we'll be able to take it. Then the next
Yes.
question is while language is not understood to me, what should I do? That's by
Huh.
Pramila.
Yeah. Yeah. Language is one of the biggest, can be a big barrier. If I choose to speak to you in Greek or in Latin now, or in Urdu, not many people would understand that now. So there's nothing that as a listener, you landed yourself in a situation where there is no communication. Maybe at that time, as a kind of a compensatory strategy, you can start trying to understand the body language, because again, for our solace, you should remember that 7% only is verbal. Language is only 7%. 93% you can make out the attitude, even though you are not able to understand the language. Very often we have guessed what the person is trying to say, although you are very unfamiliar with the language. You're trying to say by the gestures, by the tone, whether the person is aggressive, whether the person is pleading or requesting, whether the person is very arrogant or very policing type or very helpful type. You can make out from the speaker's body language, attitude. So you still can understand. You are not so helpless. You are helpless only to that minimum percentage of the language. And if you continue to be in that situation, slowly you will also understand the verbal part of it. Like many people pick up a language without any training, totally unconnected with their family or with their self, just by being in, by the immersion technique. You immerse yourself in that situation and you slowly understand the verbal language also. But until such time you are getting, trying to get clues from the non-verbal parameters, whatever we have discussed, attitude, tone, gestures. So so you, in that sense, you're not really helpless, even if the language is foreign or unknown or strange kind of a language.
Right, sir. I think again the gestures and the body language and other facial expressions have come up like playing a bigger role in the communication, overall communication.
Yeah.
The next is question is how to overcome stage fear. Sometimes we might have prepared well, but while coming to presentation, it leads to nervousness. How to overcome it? So this is a very common
Oh, yeah.
problem.
This is from the speaker's point of view, stage fear, not
Yes,
related to our listening, but yes, I can
listening
answer that.
skills. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. Fear of anything goes only through practice, through empathy. When you're practicing public speaking regularly, when you are taking those small steps, like you'll gain confidence in facing people, in facing the speakers, listeners, and that's a gradual process. But we must remember in this that some of the best speakers have been very awfully bad speakers in the beginning. They were afraid. Stage fear is a very big. So for that, you need practice and training, and the mindset is important. See, mindset, like they say, the ringmaster goes into the lion's cage, and the lion is supposed to be very powerful, but it listens to a thin, ringmaster. Lion can attack anybody, but it doesn't attack him. So it is through training. It is through training. It's not a miracle. It can happen. Overcoming the stress or fear, nervousness. All people would have felt this.
Yes, sir. I think I also have gone through this kind of stage fear during school time. Even now, I won't say that we don't have stage fear. It
Hmm.
is still there, but once we are mentally, I think mental setup works very positive about it and preparation. You
Yeah.
have mentioned that preparation you have done, but somewhere we are lacking. That is why we are losing that confidence. Like
Hmm.
for my this thing, if I have a session, so what I will do is the beginning part I will write completely into words. If I have to take a session like sir is taking us through, so once the written part, maybe 5 lines or 4 lines, I'll read through it. Once I'm reading it, I will, start speaking myself. The initial the fumble will go away, and then it also kind of helps in talking or through the stage. It helps, so we can all I think depending on our needs, we can take out the strategies to handle it. This is
Right.
sometimes very personal also, sometimes it can be generally answered also.
You're
So
very.
that's a
I really appreciate your personal kind of a twist. I mean, you've been very frank about your own experience. Yeah, that is how I think all of us go through that at some point or the other, especially in the beginning.
right, sir. We'll take the last question of today for today. That is, what is conversational narcissism?
Hmm. Okay, okay. Narcissism is self-love. Narcissist, the Greek character, was supposed to be in love with himself. My professor, in fact, person when I was doing my masters, he used to say that teachers are generally narcissists. They love their own voices, so they don't know where to stop in classes. They might be very good professors, but they're so much in love with their voices, they endlessly speak. This is a very oblique way of teasing because he himself was a professor, he was making a dig at professors. But any kind of a conversationalist can, if he is a narcissist, conversationalist will not allow anybody else to speak. He will dominate, he or she will dominate because they love their personalities, they love their voice so much that they might become It's good that person asked this question because very most probably a narcissist conversationalist is not a conversationalist, he is a speaker, and he will be a very bad listener. He will be a very bad listener. People will avoid such a person because there's nothing that they can express to them. And every time you can't go and listen to his or her stories. Everything is about self enhancing their image. It's all about themselves. Not only voice, love of voice, but love of their visits, love of their achievements. So it can put off the listeners. So we never allow a narcissist conversationalist or I don't think conversationalist can be a narcissist. A good conversationalist is away from narcissism. A good, you should be aware of a narcissist speaker because they can just bore the audience very badly.
Right, sir. I think it was a very relevant question also, and for us to understand also. Now we have come to the end of this webinar, the first webinar for the life skill MOOCs, which is running in the third cycle. So I will just summarize what we have been enlightened by Professor Murli Krishna. So first of all, listening is very important. We all know, and through I think question and answer, we have learned a little more. Uh, if we have no listening or bad listening, the communication overall is very very poor. As the God has gifted us with 2 ears and one tongue, it only makes clear that how much listening is important, and this is the mother of all the communication. If we are not listening and we are only speaking, as sir said, there would be no conversation, so we will become narcissist about this. Then listening each other is a kind of healing, which is a quote by Rebecca Falls. I think I love this quote because we always say we are doing the catharsis. We need that after a certain time. Every individual, I think, kind of needs that in one way or the other. We find out people, or we find out maybe places also to shout out what we want to say. It is a kind of healing for the other person who is speaking. Then we have talked about types of listening skills. It can be ignoring, which is a very beautiful listening skill, which I need to learn a little more about. Then selective, attentive, and empathetic. Empathetic, I think, which I understood is most of that healing part of it.
Mm.
Then barriers of good listening, also what is good listening and how we can overcome the barriers, which we have answered through our various questions. And I'm very happy that my listeners, my participants of the course are very very active and interactive. They have asked as many questions as they could. I think no question is a bad question, so here it applies the most. Please come up with the questions, even if from the week you have in the upcoming presentations, also in the upcoming live sessions also, so that we don't beat the purpose of this live interaction with our teachers of the MOOC. We are with them here. This video will be uploaded, but then the speaker will not be there to address your questions. So I'll humbly request all the attendees also to next time also to join and come with the questions from your modules. Be prepared, go through your modules on time so that we can take the question. This recording has been done and it is on YouTube also, and it will be posted on the portal, on the MOOC portal, where you can access it later on if you have missed any part of it due to attention
Attention
problem,
deficit.
attention deficit. So you can definitely go through it. And one very very important thing is tomorrow we are going to release a quiz. We have planned it this way that the session should be prior to the quiz, so that many of our queries are answered, and in the quiz we are more confident while answering the question. So I request all of you to go through the quiz as many times you can attend, but the last time you attend, those marks will be counted as your final marks. So if you still think that you can improve, you can take another quiz, and you can improve your marks which are required for the certification purposes. I thank first of all my participants for those lovely questions and very making the session very interactive. I thank you, sir, Murali Krishna, sir. It was very nice. I think so relaxing. This session was. You are such. I think your body language itself is very positive. That it is giving us positive vibrations and a confidence of speaking in front of you. I thank you on behalf of Dr. Manas Ranjan Panigrahi, on behalf of the whole team of this course, as well as Team SEMCA, for making yourself present here for this session and answering to all the little questions which we have as a student of you to learn better. Thank you very much. Thank you, one and all. And signing off for now. Any last words, sir, you want to add?
I just want to thank all the participants for their sincere participation. And yeah, as you said, very beautiful questions they asked, which only evidences the fact that they have been good listeners throughout today's webinar. And also quite liked the way you moderated the session, very sincere and detailed. I really love the session, and I wish the participant all the best. If in case, I just want to clarify, if I'm not able to immediately answer in the forums, I will, because I would like to read as many as possible, and then I'll respond to them in a kind of a collational manner. I'll try to collate the responses and give a response to it. So don't bear with me. I'll not be so frequent in the forums, but definitely I'm with them. I'm watching, I'm reading all the responses. Wonderful responses we have had. And thank you all participants. Thank you, Dr. Monica. And please convey my thanks to Pani Grace sir also.
Right. Thank you, sir, for reminding me about the forums. So, to the participants, we are posting 2 to 3 new forum topics. Please participate. Please share your views and your learnings and your ideas on the same. And sir and I, Manasji, will all be personally looking at it and answering to the questions, if any. And we will be taking the discussion forward in the forums. Thank you very much. Thank you all the participants and Dr. Murali Krishna. Thank you. We'll be
Thank
ending
you.
here.
Okay. Have a nice day.
Same to you,